Okay, we're recording. Welcome to Weekday Somatics. So there's a specific phenomenon that I've observed that I want to take a moment to share with you. I believe it's relevant. As I share that, and as I'm drinking my coffee, take a take this opportunity to find a posture that you can inhabit for the next 30 minutes with confidence. How about that? Do you think that's possible? To be confident, to to be authentically confident, not some false inflated show of whatever that is that passes for confidence, but the real deal, to really honestly be confident. Why? Because you're supported, because you know that support, because you are intimately connected with that support. You can sense the support. You are that support. That's the that's what I'm referring to when I'm saying inhabit a posture for 30 minutes without strain means confidence, anchored in that support. What is the support? The support is that which is here, that is totally reliable on a superficial level, useful, but superficial. We could call that gravity, right? Because here we are. We could call it space because we're supported by the space, it's reliable. But I'm also pointing to a support that transcends the ideas, but it's real because we experience it. The mind, the mechanical mind, doesn't know anything about it. It's looking for it somewhere else. So it's looking. But here we are. We're anchored in it. So notice this connection. Notice that if you're sitting, you can perceive what is under you that you can be resting upon. Notice the point of contact, or the points of contact, however you conceive of it, it doesn't matter. And notice what it is that you may be doing that distorts your perception of this support. So you may find that you're straining. You may find that you're clenching. You may find that you are are never really fully committed to the posture. There's always a second guessing. There's always a shifting, seeking for the support instead of just receiving the support. When you discover that, as you may over and over and over and over and over, so I'm not saying there's one final experience. I'm saying presently, as we inquire right now, we can observe in our experience how it is that we strain in ways that we've overlooked. So no matter how many times we've done this, no matter how expert we think we are, can we be open now to this in a fresh way so that it's fine? Yes, let's invite in all of the experience, the wisdom that comes from that experience, so that right away we can, there's the low hanging fruit, there's the, oh yes, there, that There's that familiar clenching. I can soften. There's that familiar resistance. I can release. But can we also not stop short and tell a deeper truth? So as we're here in this posture, inquiring actively, presently in this way, continuing to do so, I'll share this phenomenon. And it's something that I've observed in my experience, and maybe you've observed something like this in your experience, maybe not. Maybe this is completely irrelevant for you. But just take a look. So according to my mind, I woke up late this morning, or I got out of bed late this morning. And so I began to observe the habit of how it is that I construct lateness, how I create the experience that I call lateness. Or I could call that experience by other names. I could call it urgency, hurriedness. And what I observed, and this is the phenomenon that I want to really highlight, is that there are familiar ways in which I exert unnecessary effort. I would call them constitutional weaknesses. Weakness is a charged word. It's a loaded word, I know, but hear it just the way that it really, just in a neutral way, in the way that it actually is intended. There's a weakness because there's a reliance, a habitual reliance on a particular pathway, a particular action, a particular habit, a particular way, a particular pathway of experience. So that when there are certain triggers, any trigger, these are the ways in which I habitually behave, the ways in which I habitually tense. So I start to notice those pathways being activated. They're familiar. I recognize them. So this pulling sensation in the cheek, clenching in the abdomen. And then there's the interpretation layered on top of that that says, this is hurriedness. This is lateness. I am late. I have to try harder. What can I do? Now, if I observe, as I do, I notice that all effort is going to be routed through this constitutional weakness. It's going to be routed through the familiar pathways, the habitual ways in which I act. So what will follow from that will be familiar. It will be more of the same. And the harder I try, the more of it will happen. So to the conditioned mind, the mechanical mind, this is a disaster because there's no way to win. And through this inquiry that we're exploring together, there's a miracle. I'm convinced it's a miracle, which is that we are our eyes, metaphorically, are opened to a new possibility. So we don't have to energize the habitual way, which has only ever produced misery. So there's a new way that reveals itself, and that new way is not, it's not a way in the usual understanding that we have of a way, because it's not in reaction to something. It's instead, it's in a sense, it's in the opposite direction. It's not taking action, it's inhibition. Inhibition is maybe a bad word. It's a word that we have negative associations with, but here I'm talking about it in this miraculous sense. We are learning to inhibit our impulsiveness. We're learning to inhibit our habits of suffering, not through strain, not through restraint, but simply by being aware and not doing what we normally do. I planned to drink my coffee, but I didn't, so now I have to do it quickly. Have to. No choice. Okay, so let's give ourselves a hug. How about that? Let's take the right hand and bring it over to the left shoulder. This is of course, if it's comfortable or appropriate. I'll just use the word appropriate. If it's appropriate for you, you get to decide. And before we do anything else, just notice what this is like. that I set you up there. See, I said, notice what this is like. And then if you notice what it's like, then you're looking to mechanical mind. So we can notice what it's like, and then we can notice what it is. And we can notice that what it is not what it's like at all, because what it's like is just being drawn from mechanical memory. It's a comparison to some supposed past experience. And so we're straining unnecessarily. But when we now notice what it actually is, we start to notice perhaps how we're making it harder than it needs to be. So can we soften the right hand? Do we need to grip that left shoulder so hard? Can we allow the right arm to come more fully to rest on the chest so that we're not straining so much? Can we allow the throat to soften? Can we allow the face to soften? Can we allow the tongue to soften? And can we breathe? Can we start to feel the breath moving? And how the gentle movement of the breath informs our somatic awareness. We can start to become more aware of the relationship of the arm and the shoulder and the chest. Maybe we start to become more aware of the ribs. And then if it's appropriate, take the continuing to leave the right hand where it is, bring the left hand over to the right shoulder. Not exactly a hug, but it's kind of like a hug. And here, again, tune into the actual experience. Notice where and how it is that you are unconsciously recreating old habits, where you're straining unnecessarily to keep something lifted or pulled or pushed or gripped, and see if it's possible, because it's always possible. See that it is possible in your direct experience to soften, to release, to discover more of the rest that's available here. Now, obviously, there's some maintenance required. You can't just become like a limp noodle. But how soft can you be while remaining in this posture? Now, remember, don't strain. So if this becomes strenuous, then rest. But if you can continue to keep the arms and hands and whatever else, maintain this posture in a gentle way, then let's explore either with eyes open or eyes closed. If it's possible to do with eyes closed, let's start with eyes closed, because I think it will be clearer. Let's turn the so we're going to keep the head, the face in the same relationship to the shoulders throughout this movement. So notice the relationship of your experience between the face and the shoulders. So the face, hopefully, is restfully facing forward between the shoulders. So it's not turned toward the right shoulder, nor is it turned toward the left shoulder. And we want to keep that relationship as we turn the shoulders. Oh, and we're going to keep the relationship of the shoulders to one another so that they're not moving relative to one another. They remain as they are. But we're going to turn the shoulders to the right. So how do we do that? That's what we're finding out. And turn only as far as you can, which may be a very small movement, while maintaining the same relationship of the face and the shoulders, while allowing the face to remain soft, allowing the tongue to remain relaxed, allowing the throat to remain open, allowing the eyes to remain soft. And so that you can breathe gently without strain, so that you can feel the breath moving through the body. Here we are turning, we're twisting, actually, the spine. So the breath will move in a different way than it does when we're not doing this. So feel the breath, feel how the breath moves, and feel how the breath moving informs your awareness and allows you to soften more. And then slowly come back to center, being careful to keep the same relationship between the face and the shoulders so that you're not turning the head, but you're twisting gently, of course, the spine, or in this case, untwisting. And then let's do the same to the left. So we're keeping the same relationship between the face and shoulders as we turn the shoulders to the left, only as far as we can. While breathing. And then slowly release. Let's do that one more time at your own pace to each side. So to the right, then to center, then to left, and to center. And the key, of course, is awareness. So do this with awareness. Take your time with it. There's no hurry. There's no prize for being the first one to turn to the right. And if, like me, you encounter any experience that you maybe interpret as difficulty, challenge, frustration, discouragement, disappointment, irritation, impatience, then celebrate that, because that's good news. That means that you're becoming aware of your conditioning, your habits that have been unconscious, that have been the main driving force in your life, that have been only misery. So by becoming aware of them, you can start to actually become aware of them as they really are, rather than the interpretation. So the interpretation is the irritation, impatience, frustration, disappointment, discouragement, upset, so forth and so on. The actuality is just unnecessary effort, strain, habits. That's all. Okay, gently, slowly release the arms and hands. See how pleasurable you can allow that to be. Can they just slide down so that you can just allow the weight of the arms to do as much of this as possible. Allow the arms to come to rest. And then take a moment to notice what this experience is. And perhaps you can observe impulses to adjust, to get more comfortable, to make a sudden shift, and see that it's possible not to do that, and instead just to remain here and to remain aware of the actual experience, so you can start to see how the habitual interpretation is not true. So the habitual interpretation is that this is wrong, this is bad, Anything that's unfamiliar is bad, difficult, strenuous, painful, uncomfortable. And instead of indulging the usual habits, see that you can actually be aware of what it is that you're doing that's unnecessary, and see that you can soften that so that this becomes easier, more pleasurable, more natural. And then, if and when it's appropriate, let's do something very, very similar but different, because let's place first the left hand on the right shoulder, and as before, take this time to really notice what this is. Notice how you are still making unnecessary effort, and see that you can soften that. And notice how much easier it is now to become aware of that unnecessary effort, to identify it correctly, and to soften it than it was, say, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Notice that you can just start to allow for the skeletal structure to expose itself, because on some level you're developing trust that that skeletal structure is perfect. It can support you without you having to strain and make all the unnecessary efforts. So you can just start to feel the actual shape of the bones in the shoulder. Allow anything that's not bone to soften, to release. Without gripping with the left hand, you can just allow the natural heaviness of the hand and arm to rest upon the right shoulder, and to clarify the structure, the bones, the support. Allow the face to be soft, the throat, the whole front side of the body. Notice how the shoulder was being pulled forward, because it definitely was. And how it can soften as the chest softens. As the chest softens and the arm can rest more fully on the chest, you can start to notice the natural breath moving. Perhaps you feel the ribs gently moving, front side and back side. And you can maybe notice the old habits of lifting in the collarbones in order to breathe, and you can just allow that to soften, because you don't need to make that unnecessary effort right now. Of course, there are appropriate times for that, but right now is not likely to be one of them. And then let's explore bringing the right hand to the left shoulder while keeping the left hand on the right shoulder. And allow the placement of the right hand on the left shoulder to inform your somatic awareness. Allow this sensation, this experience, this posture to awaken greater ease and restfulness in you, clarification of the whole self, the whole body, the whole experience, allowing both shoulders to soften under the gentle weight of the hands and arms, and allowing the breath to gently soften and expand the whole torso, the rib cage, front and back, the chest and the back. And notice how the shoulder blades can just rest. They don't need to draw together. They don't need to pull upward. They don't need to do anything. They can just spread and rest. Of course, don't strain. So if this becomes strenuous, then just rest as you need to. And for those of us who are able to do so now, let's explore turning the shoulders and really the torso to the left. So we're keeping the face in the same relationship to the shoulders. We're twisting lower down in the torso in order to bring the upper part of the torso to the left, toward the left, turning to the left, only as far as we can do comfortably. And when you're turning to the maximum range that you can sustain comfortably, which may be very, very small, so don't worry if that's the case. It's totally okay. Take a moment to soften consciously, to observe any unnecessary effort. And then as you continue to remain aware of that conscious softening, maintain that same spaciousness and softness as you release to center. And then turn to the right. We're really wanting, I'm wanting us to clarify many things, but among them, the relationship of the shoulders and the back to the neck and head. So consciously allow for the neck and head and face to remain soft and as passive as possible. Release to center. And then let's do that one more time to the left and to center, and then to right and center at our own pace. Consciously remaining aware of the softness of the neck, inhibiting any unnecessary effort. So as soon as we become aware of the impulse to strain, we can pause and soften, release, so that we don't indulge that habit. Sometimes I find I need to just ease up a little bit, pause, ease up, soften. The, the, the real success in this is not what it looks like externally. Nobody else can really know what your experience of this is or what benefits there are for you, although in time it will show, but there's a time lapse there. But only you can know, because only you can tell the truth. Are you straining? or not. Doesn't matter what it looks like. What matters is, are you straining? Are you aware of the habits of strain, and are you able and willing to inhibit those habits so that you can be present to the stability and the stillness and the support? Then let's slowly allow the hands and arms to slide down lazily. And come to rest as they do at our own pace in our laps. And again, be aware of the habits of suddenness, of sudden shifting, adjustments. Notice habits of here's just some examples so that you can know what kinds of things to look out for. Shrugging the shoulders, shifting the weight from left to right, front to back, clearing the throat, wriggling the nose, furrowing the brow, squeezing the eyes. Exaggerated breath. Such as sighing. And see that it's possible not to indulge those habits. And my promise, my promise to you, my promise to you, because I really sincerely believe this is so, is that this is a useful, very, very useful thing to explore, because when you become, and as you become aware of those habits, which the mechanical mind likely will dismiss as completely insignificant, irrelevant. But my promise is that as you become aware of them and you cease to indulge them, you will realize just how much you were straining and just how much that strain was hurting you. Even though your mechanical mind overlooks it and dismisses it, as you become aware of it, you will see just how painful it has been and how completely unnecessary it is, and how all of those small but sudden and, in truth, violent actions, habits that we all have, those tics that are unconscious ways that we shift and maintain various states, but fundamentally so that they are things that we do to maintain our unconsciousness. All of those things combined create this restrictive shell that we have come to identify as and that we struggle unconsciously to defend, while at the same time we hate, because it is so painful. So as we become aware and we cease to indulge those habits, what we become aware of is what does not change, what is completely reliable, and what is always here. So that these kinds of inquiries that perhaps up to now have been mostly just mental start to become more alive in us, and we can start to see the authentic possibility of a richer, more pleasurable, more authentic, more grounded moment to moment experience, so that we're not leaping from one drama to the next. And let's start to consciously transition now from this formal inquiry to our awareness of the room we're in, and see that we can do that without it disturbing anything, so that we can remain aware of this silent support, the clarity that we have discovered in this formal inquiry, even as we transition into whatever it is that will be next, so that we don't lose that by leaping from one state to another, but we remain aware as the state changes, because the state is always changing. So we have this possibility of remaining aware. If your eyes are closed, then begin to explore opening the eyes slowly, and see that it's possible to do that without disturbing this awareness, the silence and spaciousness. Even if thoughts enter, even as the visual field begins to perhaps take on more complexity, more light, shape, color, we can remain aware of this stillness that is not disturbed by the visual field. And I'm going to end the recording of the formal inquiry. For those who are here live, we'll stay on. For those who are watching the recording, thanks for joining.